Teaching history, the moment is every day. The moment is every time somebody gets it, because I like to get up there and teach stories, because history is the recording of the past. The past has happened, it's over, and then historians record it, and then we take those stories and then we tell them, and then the kids are engaged by those stories, and they're very diverse stories, so let them decide what the truth is by examining all those different stories. So I like to take them to the human story, no matter what we're talking about, and then when they connect to that, and it's either a whole room of 35 kids that are totally silent because they got it, because they connected to it, that's the greatest moment for me. That's why I stay teaching, because of...
Probably around 2002 I started dreaming about this, because I was working with children and they sang so beautifully, and I had taken some courses, and one of the thrusts in one of the courses was that if you really want children to sing well, give them their own folk music. So I started researching into Canadian folk music, and we as students and teachers started studying which songs came and why they were popular, and we started trying them out. And the ones that students responded to the most quickly were the ones that I wrote down. Thinking, what is it about these songs that children respond to so quickly? Is it that they're tied to our ancestors and the hard work that they did on our behalf so that we could live here so beautifully now? When I've worked with both the First Nations and the Métis community, some of them have come to me afterwards and said, my grandma used to sing that song to me and I'd forgotten it. And these links would make me realize, this is a true, beautiful piece of our own, the history of this land long before it was called Canada.
A project we did last year involved researching the lives of soldiers who had passed away in Afghanistan over the past few years. Students would research their lives using newspapers on the internet, and they would create a tribute to that soldier. It could be a poem, a poster, a letter to the family. One of the mothers of the soldiers who had passed away phoned our school. They had received the package finally, and this mother wanted to speak to the student who created the poster and poem for their son who passed away. And the student who created this poster and poem was a special needs student, someone who didn't have a lot of support in life in terms of family and resources. And I think for the first time when that student went to the phone to speak to this mother, and the mother expressed how much appreciation she had for what he had done, the selflessness of the act, I think for the first time that student realized the power he has, the power to create positive change in someone else's life, someone he's never met, someone who lived across the country. And I think that was my best moment, when something we did came back and affected that child so deeply.
Walk in and the girls sit down. I ask them, what are you doing here? What are you taking? And they say, well, they're here to take history. And I said, but what is history? And out of this comes a conversation that history is the story of people, places, and events in the past that shape the way we are in the world today. So then we start with a scenario, well, can history change according to the person who tells the story? So through various exercises and activities, the girls learn that the story does indeed change according to the storyteller. So then we start to examine, well, who is telling the story and whose stories are not being told? Because
they all had a historical name about a building or a person or an event. And I thought, isn't that interesting that people in France go to a bus shelter and they learn about their history directly or indirectly because of where they're standing. So I thought I should do that in my own town, because I don't think I know enough about Saskatoon history. I'd like my students to make Saskatoon history bus shelter posters, and I'd like to cover an entire city bus with Saskatoon history. Stop Racism one is really close to my heart because I work a lot for awareness of racism in my community with the children, and it's always a huge event in our school. And the student that did that poster actually scanned every child's hand in our school. So over 300 children's hands were scanned, and she put them on the poster, and part of the poster looks like a heart, one of the colors of hands. So the amount of time she put into making that statement, for me, made it really personal, because I put
the idea that it is a story and a story of mankind. And Jim Shooter, a comic writer, who I like to quote, Jim once said that storytelling comes down to, breaks down to 3 different sections: what was, what happened to change it, what was the result. I start with the result, and the result is us, or the result of the students, and I have the students brainstorm who they are. And in this situation, for the most part, I have them brainstorm what is being Black in Canada. And I find it problematic because what came back was very, very negative. So we started to analyze why they see themselves as negative, and we use history to start to break down the cause and effect of what's happened to lead them to this point. So starting from their own lives and their own situations, their own frame of reference, it becomes very exciting to actually go back into history and see if the problems that we're facing as a community today are problems that we faced, at the beginning of time. And we come to find that no, it's not. And so we can go through and we use video, we use movies, we use the media in general, we use magazines, newspapers, to try and help these students understand the cause and effect of history for their own lives, and the cause and effect of history for Africa, dealing with colonialism, slave trade, etc. And it works pretty well.
That for years I would list the names of the boys who fought at our school in the wars. They would hear the names, maybe they saw some of the faces. But one time I said the streets that they lived on and the number on the street, and that changed it completely, because then everybody there got quiet in the auditorium. That's where they live, or that's their neighbor, or that's next door. And then that brings it right close to them. That's their local history. It's their history. But then the
story became to be in the first place. We have to understand that sometimes not everybody's story is being articulated in the most appropriate way. And so if we're going to have these young people go on to record the story of our nation, then they have to do it with open eyes. And I don't want them to just take the story of the history of Canada to be what I tell them it is. I want them to be those critical thinkers, to question, and to look for those voices that are perhaps need someone to champion them, or perhaps be the voice that is someone who is not being heard. So they are the ones who are going to record the story for us, and I want them to do it as well as they possibly can.
That a 9-year-old boy isn't going to care a whole lot about 20 pages of a textbook. But if I can give them one piece of really interesting information about a certain explorer and then attach it to a song, they'll likely remember it until they're senior citizens, because don't we all remember songs in our old age? Even as educators, as parents, as Canadians, that's what we want. We want our children, Canada's greatest natural resource, to know and understand who we are, to walk with an attitude of gratitude, gratefulness to those who've gone before us for all that they've done to give us a life here in this, the greatest country there is. In the classroom, a song can help them reorganize their biorhythms. I'm not sure how it all works. It's something magical. But music does accelerate the learning process. Come on, ye jolly shanty boys, come listen to my song. It's all about the shanties and how they get along.
I think they really get engaged because we can start to really dismantle some of the core beliefs that they have about themselves. And we ask them where those things come from. Where do the labels that they've adopted come from? Are they something that have been generated from their own community, or is it something that's been generated from outside of the community? And then once you actually start to understand that perhaps these things are problematic, you can start to solve the problem as soon as you find out what the problem is.
And I think that's really important for children to know where they came from. You can't live your life in a vacuum. You need to know where we came from to make informed decisions about the past, or informed decisions about the future based on the past. Well, in Canadian art history, I find is not given enough, guess you call it playtime in the classroom. So I try to increase that playtime with the kids and make them aware of Canadian history, to again make informed choices. If they know where art came from in Canada, they can make informed choices about where they want their art to go. As a teacher, that's my big goal, is to engage everyone. That's all I want to have happen in my classroom, have everybody excited about art and excited about art history, so that they leave my classroom wanting to be a lifelong learner.